Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. Now today we are carrying on with our updated table predictions. Now yesterday we did the Premier League and today we are updating my prediction for the Championship based on what we've seen so far in the opening 2/5 of this season. Just before we get into today's video guys, make sure you've dropped a like on this one, subscribed if you are new, and instead of going mad in the comments thinking, oh I've been mean to your team, just let me know where you'd predict your team to finish down in the comments and we'll talk about it. So then, starting at the bottom and working our way up, I have gone for Barnsley, Derby County and Bristol City. Now let's start with Barnsley. An interesting week coming into the international break because Shot went and then they beat Derby. That was a massive result and you thought that could be the turning point. And then they play Hull at home and lose 2-0. And I just think with Barnsley, it kind of sums them up this season. It's a really frustrating season for the Barnsley fans, and I do think they're going to go down, and I do think they're going to finish bottom. I just can't see them winning many games this season. They beat Coventry 2 games into the season. That was a game I went to, and I don't know how they won that. A real backs-to-the-wall performance where they just got it over the line, saved a penalty in the last minute, and then they beat Derby. And between all of that, they haven't won any games. They've literally won 2 so far this season, and I just think they look flaky. I think you'll see sometimes with teams when they have one really strong season where they perhaps overachieve, the second season, if they lose a couple of players and the manager, it can really hit hard and you could be at risk of going down, and that's what I think for Barnsley. In 23rd place, I've gone for Derby County. Now at the start of the season, I did back them to finish rock bottom, but what I've seen so far makes me think they could come off the bottom of the table, but I don't know if they're going to have enough to climb 3 places and stay up. Obviously, with the minus 12-point deduction, that's already a setback. If they get another deduction, that finishes them off. But in terms of on the pitch, they've been doing all right, to be honest. At the start of the season, they were picking up some decent wins, a few draws in there. And since then, it's slowed down a little bit. There's been a couple of defeats. They're still drawing games, which means they're moving, but they need to be winning games. They're playing catch-up, remember. 1 point per game is not enough for Derby to stay up. So if they can get back-to-back wins or 3 wins out of 5, those kind of little runs, then they could start scuttling up to the other teams and maybe getting out of that bottom 3. But for Derby County, I think they've been okay so far this season, but over the course of the season, are they going to win enough games to stay up? I personally don't think so. Let me know if you disagree down in the comments. And in 22nd place, believe it or not, I have gone for Bristol City. Now, there's plenty of teams to choose from, and I'm being a bit outside the box with Bristol City. I've gone for them based on their poor form at the moment. I saw them at the CBS just before the international break, and they looked flaky as anything. They played the whole second half a man up on us, and we looked like we had the extra man on them, and we battered them in the second half. I've really not seen a worse team at the CBS so far this season, and I'm not trying to be horrible to Bristol City. I think they're a good club, they have got good fans, and they deserve better, to be honest. I think Nigel Pearson, for me, I don't know if he's the right fit for them, and the players they've got, they're okay, but I don't know if they've got the quality to stay up this season. If this poor form continues, they really could get sucked down. Just staying up then, I've gone for Hull City, Peterborough and Reading. Now Hull City, they've been in the bottom 3 for most of this season, and I think most people are going to predict them to go down because they're not winning frequently enough. They're a team for me that on their day are actually real good. Away at Preston, what a performance. When they beat Middlesbrough, a really good performance. And then they've just won away at Barnsley, 2-0. What a performance. But they're only winning 1 game every sort of 6 games, and that's not enough to keep them up. With Hull City, they either turn up or they don't. There's been a few really bad defeats in there as well. But I think when you're in a relegation battle, if you can just keep chipping in those wins every now and then, if they can just make it more frequently, like 1 win in every 4 or 5, then it could just be enough to see them rise above the bottom 3. And I'm just going to back Hull City to stay up. Call me mad. In 20th place are Peterborough United. I am backing them to stay up. I've been fairly impressed. Goal scoring wise, they're pretty good. At home, they're pretty good. What will let them down this season is their defence and their away form. On the road, they've only won the 1 game away at Hull City. They've been getting a beating on the road a lot of the time. They lost 6-2 at Sheffield United, 3-0 at Coventry. I could go on, but the home form is quite good, to be fair. They've only lost a couple of home games. They've lost at home to Fulham and West Brom. There's no disgrace in losing to those teams, and I think they've lost late on in both of those games, only 1-0. They have been picking up some good wins. They have been scoring quite a few goals, and despite having the worst goal difference in the league, I think their home form and the goals that they can score is just going to be enough to keep Peterborough United up. And in 19th place, I've gone for Reading. This would be a little bit of an underwhelming season, but at least they're not going down, I suppose. I think at the start of the season, the expectation was they could finish anywhere. Last season, they'd finished 7th. They'd spent most of the season in the playoffs. I did expect a bit of a drop-off, but maybe not as much as I've seen so far this season. They have just come into the international break on the back of a 2-1 away win at Birmingham, but I don't think they're going to have a great season overall. I think they've lost 9 out of their opening 17, which is more than a defeat every 2 games, so I don't know with Reading. I think they're going to be a bit inconsistent this season. Just above that, I've gone for Cardiff City, Preston and Blackburn Rovers. Now let's start with Cardiff City. It's one of those teams where at this point of the season, they're a wild card because McCarthy's gone out the door and the bad form has stopped for now. They did pick up a win against Huddersfield coming into the international break. So I do expect a little climb from them. To be honest, they could prove me wrong and climb even higher. They could even finish mid-table this season. But I think with that slow start, it's really going to hinder them. And for me, what's going to be crucial for Cardiff City is how they come back after this international break. If they get off to a good start and win 2 of their next 3 games, then they're going to suddenly start climbing towards mid-table. But I'm going to go for 18th for Cardiff City. In 17th place are Preston North End, and for me, one of the hardest teams to predict this season. At the start of the season, I was quite harsh on them. I said they'd finish really low in the table, and at the start of the season, it was looking that way. I think they lost their first 3 games. Since then, they've started to climb the table, but you saw with the week just gone, the nature of the championship. They win away at Bournemouth 2-1, the first team to beat Bournemouth this season. You think, oh my God, what a result for Preston. They then go away to Forest and lose 3-0. So, such a hard team to predict. They could finish higher than this, they could have finished lower, but I'll go for 17th place for Preston North End. In 16th place are Blackburn Rovers, and this is probably me being a bit harsh, to be honest, because at the time of recording this, Blackburn are just outside the playoffs, and they did just beat Sheffield United 3-1. But I wonder if that Sheffield United win papered over some cracks that we saw in the Fulham game. That 7-0 defeat really stands out to me. You could put it down to one bad day for Blackburn. They had a red card, they're playing one of the top teams, but ultimately it shows the flakiness of Tony Mowbray's Blackburn Rovers. I think they are very good on their day. They can beat pretty much anyone on their day. But over the course of the season, I've seen with Tony Mowbray teams before, they just fall away and they have that bad spell, and I ultimately think Blackburn could do with a better manager than him. I'm going to say 16th for Blackburn Rovers. The next 3 teams I'm going for are Blackpool, Middlesbrough and Birmingham City. These 3 could finish anywhere. We'll start with Blackpool, who I've been so impressed by so far this season. At the start of the season, I did just back them to stay up, but only just. But what do I know? Blackpool have been fantastic so far this season. They are really flying on the cusp of the playoffs, to be honest. I think over the course of the season, they might have a little bad run. They might have a few injuries, which might see them fall away a little bit. And I think maybe putting them in 15th place is a little bit harsh from me. If you're a Blackpool fan, let me know what you think. But ultimately, if they do finish 15th and they finish above Preston and Blackburn and they're a newly promoted team, what a season that's been from them. In 14th place are Middlesbrough, and another wild card because obviously Warnock's gone out the door. They've brought in Chris Wilder. I've always liked Chris Wilder, but it's one of them where he's not at Sheffield United, so it's a different kettle of fish. How long will it take him to adjust to this role? Obviously, he's got 2/3 of the season to play with this Middlesbrough team, but because they've been so inconsistent so far, it's really hard to call Middlesbrough. Now, don't get me wrong, he could get them bursting towards the playoffs. They've already been flirting with the playoffs this season, but I just don't know with Middlesbrough. They seem so inconsistent that I'm going to just put them in the middle of the table. In 13th place are Birmingham City. At the start of the season, I think I had them 17th or 18th, so this is a massive improvement from them. They're such a weird team. They're such a hard team to call. I've said on their day, very good. They seem to go through good spells and bad spells. They had a really good start to the season. They had a wobbly middle where they lost and drew a few games. And since then, they've started to win a few games. Although they did come into this international break after a 2-1 home defeat against Reading. They're just a hard team to predict. I've said with Cookie before, they're actually quite good. The XG says that Birmingham should be a little bit higher in the table. And I do like Lee Bowyer. I like some of the players they've got. I'm going to go slap bang in the middle of the table for Birmingham. Just finishing inside the top half, I've gone for Sheffield United, Huddersfield Town and Millwall. Sheffield United are a really hard one to call. They did have a slow start to the season, but for me, I've always been thinking so far this season that it's a matter of time before they start putting some wins together, because realistically, I don't see how they're going to finish 18th or 19th with the squad they've got and Jukanovic. To be honest, if they don't start winning games soon, you could see Jukanovic come under a lot of pressure and maybe possibly sack this season, but ultimately I think Sheffield United will have a surge this season. Whether they'll make the playoffs, it's hard to call because that slow start could cost them, but I'm backing them just to get into the top half this season. Next up, Huddersfield Town, and a real surprise package considering they just stayed up last season. I think it was 20th or 19th place, so a massive improvement from Huddersfield Town. And to be honest, I didn't see it coming. Another team that are actually quite inconsistent. On their day, really good. They've won quite a few games already, but there's some performances in there where you think, that's not a good one. And I think that defeat to Cardiff just before the international break will really hurt them. I still think they could have a good season. I'm backing them to make the top half here, but they could be another Barnsley where they could surprise us all and get into the playoffs. In 10th place, I've gone for Millwall. I was umming and ahhing whether to put them in the top 8 or the top 6 because they do look quite good. The only problem for them is they're drawing quite a few games where they feel like they maybe should have won. They obviously drew against my team, Coventry. They obviously drew against 10-man Derby coming into the international break. So Millwall, little bit inconsistent for a team trying to sneak into the playoffs, but you've seen with teams like this, if they could just hang around mid-table for most of the season and just get that little run where they win 3 or 4 on the bounce, then they just sneak into that top 6. And I think Millwall could be one of those teams that just maybe do it this season. We'll wait and see. On the cusp of the playoffs, I'm going for Swansea City, Nottingham Forest and Luton Town. Any of these 3 could finish in the playoffs for me. Honestly, these 3 on their day again, really, really good. In 9th place, Swansea City, a team I really could see sneaking into the playoffs this season. They had a bit of a slow start. I wonder if that will cost them this season. Maybe, maybe not. But Russell Martin is starting to get the results that the performances before had promised. I think there's been a few draws and defeats where he thought they could have got something from that. And now they're starting to pick up a few more wins. Okay, they've just come into this international break on a 4-0 defeat at Bournemouth, but Bournemouth away is not an easy game for anyone, except for Preston, obviously. When Swansea City came to my team, Coventry, at the CBS, they really did do a job on us. They got 2 early goals and then just kept the ball so we couldn't get back into the game. I think they're a good team, and I think with Russell Martin, with Joel Perreault, with Jamie Patterson, they've got a good togetherness. I think Swansea will be in the battle for the playoffs this season. In 8th place, Nottingham Forest. Who'd have seen this 8 or 9 games ago? I was thinking they could really go down this season. Imagine that. But that is the nature of the Championship. Nottingham Forest, they're a team that really can have a good spell and a bad spell. And they really could still finish anyway. If they go on another bad run, they could fall down the table. But ultimately, I think now they've got Cooper in, I don't think they're going to have too many bad spells, and I really think they're going to be in the battle for the playoffs. They could get in there, but I'm going to put them 8th. And obviously I've put Luton Town in 7th place, a team that promised so much, but can they deliver at the end of the season? They're a team that remind me of Barnsley, a team that have really come from nowhere to battle for the playoffs. And to be honest, they've come from even further. Luton were a non-league team 6 or 7 years ago. I remember them playing in the National League, and the journey Luton Town have been on, it would just be sensational to see them get to the Premier League. They obviously did well in League 2, they did well in League 1, and they've more than consolidated in the Championship. For me, they're one of the better teams in the Championship. They play really good football. The XG suggests Luton could get into the playoffs this season. I'm going to put them 7th, but I think there's so many ways this could play out. I think if Luton could just be that little bit more consistent, then this could be a real season to remember for them. Just finishing inside the playoffs then, I've gone for Stoke City, Coventry City and QPR. Let's start with Stoke City then. Since they've come down from the Premier League 4 or 5 years ago, there's always been this expectancy for a team like Stoke to get into the playoffs, and they just keep missing out. There's always little spells in the season where they're just not good enough, and over a season they just can't be consistent enough to do it. But I think this season they've got the mentality, the strength, and I think they'll have the consistency to do it. You've seen in the last 2 results before this international break, they've had to grind out hard-fought wins, a 1-0 at Blackpool, a 1-0 at Luton, 2 teams that are also battling to try and get into the playoffs. They also look really good at home, and I just like the manager, I like the players they've got. For me, Stoke are just going to make the playoffs. In 5th place, I've gone for Coventry City. Now, at the start of the season, I wouldn't have even dreamt of this. I did think we'd improve on last season. Most teams do seem to consolidate more in the second year, and I think we've done more than that this season. We've been fantastic, to be honest. At home, we've got the best home record in the league. We did have a little slip up against Derby. We did lose our first game at home against Swansea, but that win against Bristol City just shows the character we've got. We won with 10 men. I think the sign of a team that's going places this season is a team that can show that they can come from behind to win, and we've done that so many times. And a team that scores late goals show that they will go to the wire. I think away from home we do need to improve, because we can't rely on our home form to carry us into the playoffs this season. We have won away at Hull, we have won away at Blackpool, but we need to try and get away wins soon. We've got Sheffield United after the international break. That is going to be a big one. And I think with Coventry City, there will be some people saying we will fall away, but who'd have thought Barnsley would make the playoffs last season? I think with it being so open this season, you could see a Coventry, you could see a Blackpool, you could see a Luton. A team you didn't expect to get in there probably will do it. And for me, I think Coventry City are going to get over the line. We've already got 30 points. If you get over 70 in the Championship, that's usually enough. If we can get to 38 or 40 by Christmas, then we are well on course for it. It's going to be an exciting season for the Coventry fans. I think we might just do it. In 4th place, I have gone for Queen's Park Rangers. Now, at the start of the season, I backed them to make the playoffs, and I am standing by that. I think so far this season they've been pretty good, pretty much what I expected. I think if they can throw 3 or 4 wins together, then they will start to catch up with teams like Coventry and West Brom, who are in the higher ends of the playoffs. And the main thing for me with QPR is form. If they can end this season as well as they ended last season, then they are no doubt making the playoffs this season. And in my top three, I've gone for West Brom in third, AFC Bournemouth in second, and Fulham Football Club in first. Now, if we start with West Bromwich Albion, a little bit disappointing. I still think if they finish third, it's quite a good season overall. But for me, I did back them to win the league at the start of the season, and they're nowhere near showing the levels of winning a league, especially when you see Bournemouth and Fulham going about the business the way they are. West Bromwich Albion just not quite living up to those levels. I don't see West Brom falling outside the playoffs. I think they're way too good for that. I think the squad depth and the quality will get them over the line, but I just think with Ismail, he's not quite getting the best out of this team, and I think they might just have to try and do it through the playoffs this season. In second place are AFC Bournemouth. I did back them to finish second at the start of the season, and I am standing by that. If they don't finish second, then they're going to finish first for me. I think Scott Parker is getting so much out of this team. I said before, they've got so much quality. If they can just avoid a bad run, then they will be fine this season. They can afford the odd defeat here or there because of the strong start they had to this season, but with AFC Bournemouth, like I say, if they just avoid a bad run and just keep those wins coming, they're going to be absolutely fine this season, and they're heading back to the Premier League. Top of the league, I've gone for Fulham Football Club. Now, if you go back to the last international break, they weren't at their best. They'd just lost 4-1 at Coventry, they'd lost at Blackpool, they'd lost a few other silly games like Reading at home, but since then, they've been on a mad run, and they are winning game after game after game. And if Bournemouth slip up, I think Fulham will overtake them. For me, these two are going to be my top two. They really could finish in any order. I have just gone for Fulham to pit them to the post because they've got Mitrovic scoring goals. They've got Harry Wilson, who looks quality in the Championship. So for me, Fulham win the league. So then, that wraps up today's video, guys. That is my Championship updated table predictions. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know what you think will happen after the international break as well. There's some big games coming. Make sure you've liked this video, subscribed if you are new around here for more content to come soon, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.